we're going into our inner world. And once we go into our inner world, we remove all the noise to go deeper into it. All these things, whether it's meditation, writing, questions, key questions, we start getting a sense of what's important to us. There's an emotional pathway and there's a thought pathway. Through this, we are making meaning of what happened in an iterative way. We're moving from one set to another. Till at one stage, we can create a meaning that is so empowering for ourselves that becomes our purpose. And there's a term for it where you have post-depressive stress, but you have post-traumatic growth. Energy behind it is so great that you can go out and change the world.
Welcome to the Upward Spiral podcast, where we explore the power of positive change and continuous improvement to create an upward spiral in all areas of your life. I'm your host, Michelle O'Brien, and I am thrilled that you're here. In today's episode, we're going to be diving deep into the world of purpose-driven success. So if you're feeling stuck in a rut with your career, yearning for more meaning, or simply curious about how to align your work with your passions, then this episode is for you. We'll uncover practical strategies, inspiring stories, and actionable steps to help you unlock your true potential and create a career and even life that truly lights you up. As someone who's experienced a transformation of sorts, I think, since quitting drinking, I have ended up on this kind of upward spiral in my life that was honestly so unexpected. And I'm really passionate about helping other people do the same. And this is the podcast. You know, I'm trying to talk to people who can help me maintain that momentum in my life. The journey has taught me that aligning your purpose and your values is key to achieving that momentum and that peak performance and to living a fulfilling life. So today, I'm incredibly excited to welcome an extraordinary guest who embodies this philosophy. So he is an entrepreneur, a keynote speaker, and a coach who's worked with prestigious organizations from Google to Unilever, HSBC, and has empowered over 25,000 individuals to discover their potential. His podcast is ranked in the top 3% globally, and his workshops consistently receive rave reviews. So with his insightful perspective, genuine passion for helping others thrive, I know this conversation is going to be incredibly valuable. So please join me in welcoming to the Upward Spiral, Sharad Lal.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. I'm so excited to get into this with you. And like I said before we started, I'm going to try and I'm going to try and not let this spiral into a therapy session because I basically...
I'll try as well, not to go into a therapy session.
I secretly want a coaching session with you without having to pay for it. So I thought this could be the way. So yeah, really, there's so many questions that I want to ask you. But I think the first one is, how would you explain what it means to be purpose-driven? I hear that term a lot.
Yes.
What does that actually mean?
So I've heard this and I thought it was like a buzzword thrown around for ages. And when I thought a little bit about it, I associated purpose as this one thing we're supposed to do. We're going to find our calling and do that. In other places, I've looked at it as people look at it as social service. I'm going to do some social service and call it purpose. And I was trying to figure out what really does this word mean? And if I go back to the basics and see, all right, what is the purpose of various things? So this is a glass. It has water. Its purpose is to store water and we drink through it. But we as human beings have multiple faculties. We have intellectual thought, creative thinking. We can connect with people well. We can use our hands to create new things. So our purpose, in my view, is multidimensional. And the way I look at purpose is to create a life with purposeful activities. Whether it is connecting well with people, whether it's using our intellect to solve problems and create something, whether it is using our creative skills to create something beautiful in this world, when we are doing these activities which fulfill us and make a difference to others, for me, that is a purposeful life. And that's how I define purpose.
I think I find it overwhelming sometimes when people say, what's your purpose, or you have to find your purpose, because you're right. Your mind automatically goes to, helping others, or, and having that one single purpose, that one single drive that's normally and often talked about as being in service to others or service to someone else. But that might not necessarily bring you joy.
And service could be one part of it. But I think you brought up a great point. To me, the starting point is something that is deeply important to you, to us. That's where it starts. It's an important story we might have. It's a value that's important to us that's coming out right now. Something that can bring us that fulfillment. And then we take it out and make a difference to others. So, but it has to start internally for it to be sustainable and for it to have the energy and the motivation to make us do something.
Yeah. How do we find that? I'm sorry, I've got to just ask, because it's like, okay, that sounds great, but that, like, how there's so much noise, so many things that we feel we should be doing or could be doing or are told, or we're seeing other people do. We're receiving so many communications these days. Like, where do we go? How do we find our purpose?
Yeah. So let's see the model of how things are happening right now, and then we go into it. So exactly the way you said, right from childhood, we're told what to do. We're given goals, we're given external achievements. And if we do well, everyone claps and there's a positive reinforcement, and we keep doing that. Over a period of time, we compete with others. There's jealousy. So in the way we look at life, the way we go through the world is looking externally, whether it's for inspiration, whether it's to do better, whether it's for goals, whether it's to do for achievements. And doing this for 30, 40 years, we lose touch with what truly matters. And then when we need to figure out what matters to me, many of us don't know. In fact, sometimes we look outside to see what matters to us, what marketing throws at us, what magazines show us. But the way to do it is to cancel all this noise, because this sits as noise inside us. So if you're able to remove this noise, it's more like an excavation. We're not going out, we're going into our inner world. And once we go into our inner world, we remove all the noise to go deeper into it. That's when we can get a sense of what's important to us.
Do you mean meditation?
So there are many ways to remove the noise. One, of course, clear, simple way is meditation, but it may not work for some people, because what meditation does is it cuts out all the stimuli. And when we do it over a period of time, we focus inside. And as we start meditating, many people have this experience. You realize that the world does not exist outside. It actually exists inside us. The world's inside us. Whatever we see, we perceive, it's all inside us. And that becomes fascinating. Our emotions, what turns us on, what gets us excited, it's all inside us. And once we get access to that through meditation, if we don't meditate, maybe through journaling, you just write whatever's coming in your mind and you take out the top layer. And over a period of time, we go deeper into, hey, what's important? And writing without judgment, without shame, we're just reporting what's inside there. All these things, whether it's meditation, writing, questions, key questions, what matters in life? When have you, and looking back to our life, when have you felt energized, your full power? What really gets you out of bed without anyone looking at you, but something that's important to you? Through this level of inquiry, whether it's writing, meditation, we start getting a sense of what's important to us. And it's a process, because it takes a while. Because remember, for 40 years, we've never looked inside. So the first time we look inside, it's obviously scary. Like, oh my God, what's going on? This person said something, I thought I wasn't petty, I'm getting upset and I want to get back at this person. And there's a whole lot of that stuff that happens when we look inside. So it takes us a few years to kind of get over not judging ourselves for all the weird thoughts and impulses we're having, to actually understanding what's important.
I'm like smiling, because I just feel like, okay, this is actually maybe a bit of a journey that I've been on and I didn't realize I was on it. So, I had my kids are 5 and 3 now. I had one just before COVID, the second during COVID. Kind of we were locked down, working from home in our own little kind of baby bubble. Come out of COVID, and I'm trying to kind of get a sense of self back. I've become a mom, my identity's changed. And so I kind of just go back to what I know, which is, I'm going to go out with my friends, going to maybe go and do some drinking and maybe go on a boat party. And I very quickly realized that this isn't for me anymore, that I'm not enjoying this. It doesn't make me feel good. And I also just really started to have this feeling like I wasn't reaching my full potential. I'm very much a self-optimizer. I'm an overachiever. I work really hard. And I want to work hard. There's a pride in that, and I want to do well. But I just felt like I would be giving everything at my job, but I was always feeling slightly stressed. I was giving everything to being a mom, but I didn't have the patience I wanted to have with the kids. Or, I was training for a marathon and I didn't have the energy. Like I couldn't clock the miles. Like I always just felt like something was missing. And be the type of person that I am, very type A, I was like, well, I must add more things in. If something's missing, it means there's a gap. Therefore, I'm going to add more things in, more supplements, more strength training, more play dates with the kids, more work. And it wasn't until I decided to stop drinking and gave up alcohol for 6 months that I was like, all of a sudden, I started to have more capacity. Those 2 drinks a week that I was drinking, that one bad night's sleep that you would have after the back of it had such a knock-on effect that I was like, I really started to have more capacity to think about more things. And then it started to open up a lot of these questions.
I love that.
Who am I? Who do I want to be? I've become a mom. I've stopped drinking. And also it brought up a lot of shit. Like, to be frank, a lot of shame, a lot of regret, a lot of things that happened decades ago that all of a sudden I'm like, why am I feeling these feelings for these things that happened such a long time ago? And I did a period of kind of reflection and trying to work through these things. Is that part of the process to finding your purpose?
Firstly, thank you very much for sharing that. I had a similar experience, but thank you very much for sharing that. And that's exactly where things happen. Whatever the catalyst be, so for you, it was defining yourself, and after motherhood, after COVID, and you removed a very important part of life, which was drinking, which opened up time to confront things that were always there, but drinking put them at the back. And the starting point of that, like you said, was these difficult thoughts, because those were, if you go to psychology, Freud, those were the repressed things. And once you open that can, the starting point is it'll open up in a very, very difficult way.
Yeah.
And the usual suspects, the worst emotion, shame, guilt, regret, these are going to show up, which will take our self-esteem even worse. So it's like in this typical personal growth way, you go down and somehow we have to survive that valley of despair. And people have different ways of doing it. And then go back up. And maybe we can talk a little bit about the valley of despair, because I think it's an important thing for most people making a transformation, whether you suffer something bad or you make a big change in your life. There is a downward part that starts because all these repressed things come up. And I think in my case, and now I've seen it in many other cases, my case was very similar to you. High performer, my job was whenever things would go bad, I put a Band-Aid and just run. And I realize many high performers do that. Till there is a time in life when you can't do it. And looks like for you, because there was so much of existential angst, that was the time you couldn't run away with it. And because you'd run away, all of us had run away for many years, we have to sit and confront it. And that is one of the most painful exercises. But the path to healing, you need to take time to process whatever is happening. We have to take time to do that. And we have different ways of doing it. One is we could be sitting there just feeling the emotions. We could be writing about it. We could be just immersed in it. And one of the things that I see that happens once it goes intense and intense and intense, and you look at it, slowly, just without doing anything, if you just focused and you walk into it, it starts reducing a little bit in intensity. And sometimes when you're in those dark spaces, because you're in solitude, to me, the visual that comes to mind, I had a similar experience when I had my real downturn in life. I was in this, it seemed like I was in a cave. There was a waterfall and I was just sitting in the cave and I just couldn't get out. I mean, I was one of the first time I was forced to sit with my thoughts. And like you, things from all the way back from childhood kept coming, but I had no chance of escaping. But what happened over a period of time, and I don't know if the same thing happened to you, is it reduced a bit, and then my eyes opened, and I could start seeing a little bit in the dark, and I saw pathways right there that I hadn't noticed. To me, those are the pathways to new things and possibilities. For me, it was my feminine side, completely ignored. I was a boy's boy, boarding school, never cried. I cried for the first time, and there was a certain episode. And that felt beautiful and therapeutic and moved me forward while sitting in it. Then I saw some other pathways, creativity, other things.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether you had a similar experience. There's the darkness, you're down.
Yeah.
Maybe a little pathway opens, something new happens. There's a processing.
We were actually going through a difficult time with the family because we had 3 terminally ill family members. And so I knew that we were going to be losing them within a few months. And so I actually was quite proactive with my mental health and went to see a counsellor, psychologist, and just said, look, I know I'm going to need support. I've never been through this level of grief before. I want to make sure I'm strong. I want to make sure I'm strong for my husband and my kids and my family. And, and so I started to kind of work with her just to get myself strong. And after kind of the losses and everyone passed and we kind of went into the new year, and this was a year ago, I spoke about a lot of these things that were coming up, the feelings of the shame and regret and guilt, and she said, let's do some EMDR therapy. And so I did some eye movement desensitization therapy, which helps the brain to process trauma, and it helped me massively, just to really think back on those memories and just help my brain reorganize them and process them. Do you know EMDR therapy?
I don't know EMDR therapy.
So I'm going to hold my hands up for anyone listening or watching. I'm not a psychologist, and please go ahead and Google. I will just share my experience. I think it was developed, I think during one of the world wars or Vietnam War after that, to help soldiers process trauma and things that they'd seen. And so it's putting the brain into kind of a meditative state. So the eye movement, so you will follow movement. And as you're doing, you're thinking about maybe that particular trauma. And so what happens with a lot of traumatic memories is like they when you go to sleep, the memories move from one part of the brain and get stored in another. But some traumatic memories can get stuck and aren't processed in the same way. And that's why when you think about a traumatic memory, you can have a very physical, emotional reaction to it. So I would think about some of these times where like I felt my behavior was not great and I held a lot of shame with it. I would get sweaty palms. I would feel sick in my stomach. I'd feel like I want to cry thinking about that memory. And so as you're kind of following the eye movement, you almost kind of go into a meditative state. And the therapist will ask, okay, where are you feeling this memory around your body? And you'll kind of feel tingles in your body. And you'll kind of repeat the process over and over and over again until you almost feel the memory leaving your body. It's fascinating, and that was my experience. But what I had is that when I thought every time we went into it, I would have another realization about the memory. So it would, first of all, it would kind of be, I would think about a memory and I would have disgust for the person in my memory, for myself in that memory, and shame. And then you kind of peel back a layer, and next it was like, well, actually now I'm worried about her. I'm worried about her safety. She's not safe in that situation. Why isn't somebody helping her? Then it's kind of peeling the layer back as to why there's nobody in her life that doesn't drink. Nobody knew that this wasn't good and healthy because everyone was doing it. Everybody's stuck in the same cycle. And then kind of peeling back, she was doing the best that she could with what she knew. And then there was that kind of forgiveness that came from it.
Wow.
And that was kind of like one memory that went through that process.
I love that.
Yeah. It was an amazing experience, and we did it for a number of different memories. And some memories obviously were spider webs for many others.
Yeah.
But definitely one to Google. And that was just my experience. I'm sure a psychologist could explain it a lot better.
That's wonderful. Maybe I just click into that. And I think there was a sophisticated way in which this happened. But I think even if sometimes people don't have access to it, the principles I think could be the same, where in my view, there are two pathways.
Yeah.
There's an emotional pathway and there's a thought pathway.
Mm.
And I think, like you said, this is something because I got access to mindfulness and I also used a therapist, but along with the therapist and mindfulness, I kind of managed this where it was more like focusing on the pain. So once you have a memory, which is difficult, where does it cause the pain? And then over a period of time, when you do that, at least for me, you forget the memory and it's just the pain. And then the more you focus on the pain, you see it. I liked your visual of it disappearing. The visual that in mindfulness, it just becomes smaller and smaller. And or you notice deeper, then it's like vibrating. Sometimes it's small, it's big, and then it slowly starts reducing. So in my view, when we're coming out of trauma or tragedy, there is one way of managing emotion, whichever way we do it, but emotions need to be managed. And I love the second thing you mentioned. For me, that is thoughts, because that is the opportunity where there's work been done on meaning making. How do we make meaning? Because quite often, maybe you went through the same thing, I went through the same thing. We're questioning, why did this happen? Why did the injustice of it? Why did this happen? And then we go beyond that. Okay, I'm feeling bad for someone, like you said. And then I'm understanding the situation in that context better and another layer. Through this, we are making meaning of what happened in an iterative way. We're moving from one set to another. Till at one stage, we can create a meaning that is so empowering for ourselves that becomes our purpose. And that to me is how these difficult events, huge tragedies over a period of time can lead to a purposeful outcome. And when it happens in this way, the energy behind it is so great that you can go out and change the world.
And that's it. And that's what was so incredible about the EMDR therapies. I came out of them with mantras. Like every time a memory was healed, I almost came out with mantras of, I'm smart and capable enough to succeed at anything I want, you know, and that came from kind of a memory of not feeling good enough or being told I wasn't smart enough. And it was, and then, you know, those have kind of been a real comfort and fuel for me over the last.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I'll click a little bit into that. So there are things, that's what, and there's a term for it where you have post-depressive stress, but you have post-traumatic growth. And growth happens, it's documented exactly the way where you mentioned, where once you're doing this work, you're reclaiming parts of yourself which were disposed well before this event happened. Like you said about self-esteem not being good enough or certain parts of it.
Yeah.
Suddenly that's coming back to it because in the same way in which you're processing this, there are other things which were hidden, which have come to the fore, which also get processed.
Yeah.
Which open up new areas of growth. So for me, it was, let's say, the feminine side and other things like potential. For you, it was like self-esteem, other things. There were, and where you started before the tragedy, even before you were sad, to after, you've actually grown from that because this enabled you to grow. So there's potential and purpose because the motivation with which you've come is like from deep inside, like nothing else.
Absolutely. And it's been amazing because I went from feeling so much shame to being very proud of the person that I've become. And it's like, you know, that journey, and this again is why this podcast exists. You know, it's not another sobriety podcast. Like I wasn't suffering from alcohol use disorder. I was having a couple of drinks a week, but in removing that, the capacity and what happened afterwards, the story, the everything coming up and the clearing of it out has led to purpose.
I love that.
And something else that happened afterwards and what I want to talk to you about is I had a guest on the podcast, my youngest guest in her early 20s. And we spoke about, her name's Holly Smith, and we spoke about Gen Z and alcohol and how they're not drinking as much. And I've repeated what she said so many times because she was just saying actually like her generation are very clear on their values, like what's important to them. And she talks about her three currencies, which are her time, energy, and money, which is amazing. But I had this kind of epiphany during this podcast of going, oh, crikey, I don't know what my values are. And this is mortifying to admit, but at 37 years old, I had never written my values down. I'd never thought about them. I'd never defined them. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do some work. I'm going to really sit down and really think about what's important to me, not what society has told me is important to me, what's important to me right now. Tell me a little bit about values. Like how does one find their values?
I think the same way as purpose, and the same way that you described,
Yeah.
where it's again removing the noise and going deeper to see what's important. And sometimes it could be when you go through this deeper journey, you could paint a point of time in your life where you felt really good. So it could be that you're with your family, you're having a good holiday, everyone, you feel good, relaxed. And then you notice what's happening. You break it down to, all right, I'm bonding with people. So you write bonding. There's a connection. I am doing some creative picnic making. So there's some creative stuff. Like that, you break down different things. And if we go through this process of understanding, A, when we were at our fulfilled best and what else was happening, we get a sense of our values. And B, you could look at the flip side. When we are at our worst, what's not happening? So these will give us a sense of, these are a few areas where our value, maybe it's intimacy, maybe it's connection, maybe it's depth, maybe it's intellectual thinking. These are our values. And then we kind of note it down and go through life, because there's one is understanding. Second is, what are we actually doing in life? Are we actually honoring this? Are we driven towards it? And if we are driven towards it, and if you're not driven towards it, but we've written it as a value, then maybe it's not a value. If you're driven towards it, but for some reason we're not able to do it and it's causing discomfort, maybe it is a strong value which needs an outlet. So there is an understanding and writing and figuring it out, and then there's going through life. The biggest place to actually clarify value is difficult decisions, because that's where a lot of important things clash. It's easy to say that I'm honest, I'm trustworthy, whatever. We can name a lot of these, but in some of these moments, you come up with being loyalty and, I don't know, honesty.
Yeah.
Those are, you could have both values, but some moments help clarify what is more important to you. So that would be my answer. There's removing the noise and seeing what's important through some moments of life, actually auditing your life as you go on to see what's happening, and then seeing yourself during those hard moments to see where you're going.
Embarrassingly, went to Google, to give me a list of values, like, and maybe I can just go through that list and feel what resonates. But I found that kind of that didn't work, because there are definitely biases.
Yes.
There's things that are like, oh, well, that sounds good. If I told someone that was my value, people would be impressed.
There you go. Yes.
And you're kind of doing it for the wrong reasons. And it is something that kind of you alluded to then, that it wasn't until I really sat with myself and thought, what makes me happy? Like, what is generating energy with me? What am I feeling excited about? What kind of gives me butterflies? What am I looking forward to doing? And really using that excitement as a guide. And it was, I love arts and crafts. Like, love arts and crafts. Like, my kids have got the most incredible arts and crafts box that is basically
that's so cool.
It was the arts and crafts box I wish I'd had as a child. But for me, as I just love sitting there with them and making things and gluing and sticking and painting. And that for me just makes me, I get so much joy from that. And it was kind of, okay, well then let's do more of that. And the kids love that, obviously. So it took some time to go, okay, am I really loving this thing that I'm doing? I'm figuring out.
Absolutely. And that's the process. And that'll give you a sense, like arts and craft, whether it's to do with creativity, creation, whether it's to do with, there's many angles to it, which will give you building stuff, where the value lies.
Yeah. So once I kind of articulated my values and kind of got those down, turning values into purpose. And I'll be really honest, I'm still not quite clear on my purpose. Yeah. Is that normal to not be clear on it?
I think it takes a while. And let's talk about purpose. So I think there's some parts of your purpose you're already living, the way I can sense, like time with your kids. There's good creative time with your kids. That's part of purpose.
Yeah.
You seem to be doing that. What I understand is more from a career standpoint, vocation career. That's where you're trying to figure out where your purpose is. Would that be fair? Or you're on a journey to
I'm
sort
just
that
on
out?
a journey. So I've gone from kind of having 15 years in advertising agencies,
Yes.
and then going to corporate, going to work for Disney, and then leaving corporate and setting up my own consultancy, and then now joining a startup.
Yes.
And I'll be really honest, I've loved every single job and experience that I've had. Like I'm particularly enjoying the startup at the moment just because I'm so passionate
Yes.
about this product's going to change the world. I love being creative and strategic and solving problems and communicating and talking to people and working with people and producing something and seeing results. And, I've got all of these. I'm very lucky and grateful to be doing something that I love. But I'm like, is that purpose? Is my purpose in it?
So maybe I can share something with you. So I
Yeah.
think this is something that happens with overachievers, people who achieve a lot.
Yeah.
Purpose is the act of doing these things. So it seems like you're having intellectual stimulation, creativity, etc. But then something is not fully there, and maybe you're on the path towards it. When I had my journey, my first way of evaluating myself was money, net worth, and achievements, titles. And then I went through an experience where I said, all this is bullshit.
Yeah.
I need to look for purpose, and I need to look for other things. And I started doing that. And I thought there's this conflict between achievement and fulfillment. And to me, purpose lay in the fulfillment land. So I hated money. I moved away from that, even though I was still had the company, and I was starting to do fulfillment projects. Over a period of time, I was doing good, purposeful activities, but I realized something is missing. When I would see someone getting promoted and doing well, I would say, it doesn't feel good. First, I would fool myself, but then I would say, I actually missed that. And then I realized that there is this achievement mindset, which I've been trying to squash. That's not the issue. That still needs some voice. And I can try and reframe achievement to more meaningful achievement for myself. And that becomes purposeful. So we still need goals. We still need some way, especially high achievement people, of knowing we're achieving stuff than the task itself. So then it moved from, all right, it's more in the thought leader thing. I never would put my ideas out there earlier. I would be more focused on net worth and money and stuff. Now it's like, all right, I'm going to evaluate myself in my ideas. Am I able to make an impact to people? Am I able to talk to certain companies? Do I have certain recognition? Even though I think external recognition is bad, I want recognition among my peers.
Yeah.
I want respect. I want to be looked up to. So I had some of these criteria which were all along to do with actually respect and recognition. And instead of money, earlier people recognized me as that. I'm changing my identity to this kind of a person. Somebody who's reinvented himself, somebody who's helping people with purpose, but I'm doing it in a more open way where people versus in a quiet corner without the need for fame or recognition. Because I realize that's important. And that becomes a part of my achievement thing. When it consumes me fully, it's time to then shift. But for now, I think we need something like that. We need, like high achievement people, we need some anchor.
Yeah.
And I think in your process of finding it, it's still an early stage for the startup.
Yeah.
But with time, and you're doing good work and maybe something's missing, you will be able to define something within it, which to you internally in your own world feels like an achievement, which is meaningful, makes you feel proud. Suddenly you learn a new skill that makes you feel proud. So for me, standing on stage and being able to tell stories, I used to be a BCG boring framework kind of a guy. Now I'm telling the same thing in a story form. It's a new skill. Seeing it land, seeing tears in people's eyes when I talk it. To me, then I define my achievement through that. But I need that achievement.
Yeah.
So maybe that's useful. I don't know.
Yeah. Sometimes when you define everything by an achievement, it doesn't work. Like, because you're missing the purpose and the reason. I think a little bit like this podcast, like in full transparency, I was like, I want to start creating content, and then, hopefully I can monetize it and it can be kind of a nice, like, separate income stream. And I was like, I've worked in social influence content marketing for 18 years. I know this. It has been the most humbling experience of my life.
every podcaster knows that. It's an extremely humbling experience.
Yeah, we're like, okay. But what has evolved over the last year of podcasting is what I've got out of it. I've got out those just amazing conversations with the most incredible people, and I've learned so much about myself selfishly. I've learned a lot about myself. I've just loved hearing people's stories and pulling those insights out. And the value of that now to me is greater than any number of followers.
If I can just an idea struck me, like, I know a little bit of Sean and your business. So maybe it's not like the big product in hand, because that could take a while. Maybe it is your unique skill that you've learned. It's connecting the dots through social media, podcasting experience, that you're able to get a neuroscientist who's not got this experience out there into the world, where doors start opening for the company, and you've been uniquely been able to do that. And some doors opening, maybe some revenue stream coming because of your unique effort along with that. I think that is something to feel proud of.
Yeah.
That is an achievement. And then it builds from there. Maybe then it's a new skill.
Yeah.
Maybe there's you understanding other things. I don't know.
For sure. And I also think it's not about me. The product and the neuroscientists behind it, it's going to change the world, and that for me is like, that's about using all of my skills to build that platform and get that out. So I think it's just, do we need to define everything with a purpose?
I don't think so. I think it's a tool. And sometimes the tool seamlessly comes into our life. Sometimes, to me, the biggest thing in this entire purpose discussion is the inner world. And understanding one's inner world, understanding what's motivating us, understanding that, hey, we are actually in transition, but I'm feeling a little uneasy, but knowing that. And then as we are checking in, reflecting, understanding, we are figuring out our path. And at times we're in a place where it seems like even a month back, like I'm talking about purpose and I seem very clear. A month back, I'm like, damn, what am I doing? I sold my agency. I'm going to talk to HR people. I don't know how to talk to them. This, that. What am I doing? So we will have those moments, and we can at least be, instead of fooling ourselves, be in touch with our inner world, that this is part of it.
Yeah.
This is part of it. And maybe later we see something else and then we move on. But I think it's this touch with our inner world, checking with it without hiding from it, without letting things build up, knowing ups, downs, things are going to feel weird for a period of time, because when we're uncomfortable, we're in the middle of that change. We can't see it.
Yeah.
And then shifts will happen and we celebrate it and enjoy that.
And are there any tools that you've come across that can help people make sense of of who they are? I'm thinking things like your human design, or astrology, or whatever.
I think they're all types of tools. So in the rational kind of thinking, so earlier from a rational world, you talked about therapy. I think that itself is a huge tool.
Yeah.
I learned I've had a lot of therapy, and I love therapy. I've had all kinds of therapy.
Yeah.
You get a very good understanding of why you are who you are, your patterns, right from childhood. And if you can look at it from a non-judgmental kind of way, it's a good thing to do. In the spiritual realm, there is this concept, both Buddhism, Hinduism, etc. There's the concept of being a witness to yourself, where you are seeing what you're doing. You are seeing what gets you lit up, what you get attracted to, what your pattern is, how even bad things like, I don't know, envy and jealousy build up, comparison, how things light you up, how sometimes you're manipulative, how sometimes you're helpful. That is, once you remove judgment, and the spiritual self says, without judgment, just observe yourself. That is such a big way of understanding yourself. Because we're not trying to change. We're trying to curiously observe. The same thing I would say in therapy, that mindset. Because if you're trying to change, we'll judge yourself like crazy. All of us do that. And we can do it at times. But we're all flawed. We all have weird manipulate, like all kinds of things. We have like the worst things you talk about, all of us have that. But if you can look at it with curiosity and then slowly, like you said, even when you peeled it for another person, you see the setting that you're born in. That is why I'm like this. This is why society is that you understand yourself in a bigger plane like you understood someone else. Imagine understanding yourself because you have all the nuances of seeing yourself.
Yeah.
You see, then you have compassion for yourself. That's
Yeah.
what true self-compassion is. And they talk about how self-compassion is one of the biggest ways, better than therapy or anything else, to really kind of understand yourself. There's a lot of work done on that.
Yeah.
So I would say whether we go in the ancient wisdom world and be a witness to ourselves in any way, which is self-awareness, or there are certain patterns and archetypes and stuff that exist, Carl Jung, all these psychologists, whichever way we go, I like both to get an understanding of myself.
Yeah. I'm definitely like a data person, you know, I kind of almost like being told.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's also, I think, being able to read some of these things and say, okay, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take that, I'm going to take this. This is what
Exactly.
I feel about these things. And then maybe the rest isn't relevant to me, or I'm not feeling it.
Yeah.
You know?
I like journaling as well. I keep talking about it.
Yeah, me too.
Because it's just taking stuff out. And if you do it over a period of time, you see the same pattern. And then you realize, I say that that's how I realize that I actually want achievement. Because I then call myself out. I say I don't want achievement, but I'm getting jealous when this guy does this. I'm getting jealous when he's going up. And that's building resentfulness. I'm not happy for the person. It's like weird. And then I call out that this is this pattern, that I have it. I can't fight it. Yeah. Now let me point it somewhere else. So I think journaling, for sure, over a period of time, you see your patterns and you get an understanding of yourself. And the way for transformation for me is we don't fight that. With that, which way do we work? I am like this. Now, what do I do? Yeah. What do I do with this person that I have who's like this? How do I make this person work in the best way?
And when you're journaling, are you just putting pen to paper and letting your mind go? And
I've had different styles at different times. Right now, I like my beautiful fountain pen, great paper, and just open journaling. There was a coach called Jeremy Colonna, I think, and I like what he says. He says, start with I am feeling. So you start with feeling. So I am feeling a little angry. And they're like, oh yeah, actually I'm feeling angry. I didn't even realize it. Why? Because I don't know, someone moved my coffee or whatever.
I stubbed my toe.
So you start at that level at where you are, and that'll help go. And like if you do 3 pages, typically, let's say morning paper style,
yes.
Even in that thing, we go from the top kind of issue from a feeling way to a deeper thing. What Jeremy Colonna does very well is he uses, like we have many voices in it. There's an evil voice, there's a nice voice, there's all kinds of things inside. Like there's a lot of personalities sitting inside us.
Yeah.
He gives them all a voice so they don't come out in the real world. And he uses a different pen for, the mean one is there. Hi. All right, let's say what the mean one has to say. Say whatever mean stuff you want to say about others. The compassionate one is there, let's say that. So you're giving voice to things that you don't want to bring out to the world as well.
Yeah. I always think of the artist way. I don't know if you've ever done the artist way.
No.
So the artist way is a 12-week a 12-week book, and each week you do you read a chapter and you do kind of the activities. But one of the activities is you do your morning pages, which is pen to paper, 3 pages every single morning. And then each week you take yourself on an artist date. And that's basically, you can go and do it, whatever you want, just yourself on your own. So I would go and do pottery, maybe jewelry making. Some days I would just go and walk. Some days I would sit and sketch palm trees by my swimming pool, you know. And then there were kind of other activities that you do, but it's a lot of it is about kind of self-discovery and unleashing kind of your creativity and finding your kind of artist within. But really incredible book, incredible kind of 12-week program, and brings a lot of things.
I'd check that out. I've done the morning pages part of it. But again, that's another tool for people who's creatively inclined to understand yourself. Like I know a lot of people have understood themselves through their creative expressions.
And one of the journaling techniques that Alika Tasker, our friend, taught me recently, and this was kind of just about rewiring the brain, was if something's bothering you, it's okay. Well, you say, what's the story? So the facts, you know, what's the feeling? Like, what am I feeling about this incident or this situation? I'm really trying to get to the bottom of the feeling. You know, sometimes you're like, I feel sad, but no, it's like really get into it as to what I'm feeling. Then it's where did you first have that feeling? What was the origin of that? And go back often kind of into your childhood or somewhere. And then what is the forgiveness that needs to happen for that original situation? And in that forgiveness, there's a letting go. And then the final thing is what's the mantra that comes out of it? What's the positive statement? Once you've kind of let that go. And that has been wildly helpful.
I love that. Do you do that in one sitting, or is it like you take a while?
No, you just sometimes like do it as quickly as kind of 5 minutes of literally like writing these questions and writing them out. Again, it depends on the situation, what's bothering you and how serious that is. But I've actually found it to be quite a quick exercise.
That's so cool. I'll try that.
Yeah, it's been really helpful. She's been amazing. I'd like to talk a little bit about momentum as well, and maybe that kind of downward to upward spiral. To anyone kind of on that downward spiral or kind of feeling in a dark, helpless place. I know we've talked a lot about going inside, but sometimes things feel really hopeless. What advice have you got to somebody who's maybe there and how they can get out of that?
Sure. So I would say there are two types of people again, and I'll explain the concept there. One, people just want to get out of it. But I think what we need to do is we need to process it. Otherwise, it'll always remain. Now, once we process, how do we move forward? I have noticed that at any stage, there are all kinds of emotions that will come. So like you said about hopelessness, related to hopelessness, if we start becoming aware of the emotions that are existing, there could be many. So there could be hopelessness, there could be anger, there could be sadness, there could be many things. And if we figure out what is each emotion doing, this takes a little practice, there'll typically be one emotion that's actually moving us forward. It need not be the positive emotion, it could be any. So for example, I've noticed some people when they get fired from their job, they're so angry that they use their anger to create a resume and get a better job than they had. So there could be one element taking you forward. For me, during my darkest moment, I was looking at how to move forward. I was trying different things. Nothing was working. Till I did a chakra cleansing yoga class and I cried in front of everyone for the first time. And what surprised me that I moved forward. So for me, among all the emotions that were there, sadness was the one to go into because sadness moved my mental state forward and helped me in the process of healing. So my advice would be, look at there is not just one emotion. Maybe one is talking loudly to you. There are many emotions and it's most like a pool game. There are many of these pool balls. Use one that will move you forward. And that's tactically. You may not be healed, but you moved forward. And moving forward could be you've gotten your clothes on and gone to work. I don't know.
Yeah.
You've gone by yourself and eaten a meal outside. No one needs to do something. So whatever, there's a certain step forward you've done. You made your resume, which has come out of an emotion. And once you've done that and moved to point B, a new set of emotions arrive. And then you might need something else. Maybe there's hope, false hope that takes you to the next stage. And false hope is a good companion to have for a tactical point of time. That's why it changes. We don't use this for all our life. We use it for one stage. We can use false hope. I use false hope for about a month and it really served me well till it was time to discard it because it was not doing me harm. So at every stage we see, is this emotion now moving me forward or is it debilitating you? After a point of time, sadness debilitated me because it just brought me down. But it helped me for a period of time. And then I needed something else.
Yeah.
I needed false hope. And that helped me. But after a period of time, I was living in fool's paradise. So I needed something else. And that moved. So it's the laddering of emotions, in my view, that create the upward spiral. And these may be negative emotions. You may not be feeling good, but you're moving. And with time, we're learning about ourselves. Things are happening. This starts turning into a happier momentum upward loop.
I love that. And I think so much of it is compounding as well.
Compounding, that's a great word there,
it's that the small things, you get up every day and you brush your teeth, Right. The next day you put your shoe, you get dressed. The day after. And actually just doing all of these things over time, okay, I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go for a run. And they compound. And then before you know it, you're running a marathon, you're back to work and things are great.
And it's every stage is also building your self-esteem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, massively. And we were going to talk today. I love how it's completely direct about career transitions and finding your purpose in your 30s and 40s. And I'll be honest, I've been so grateful and I've loved the last few years. And the change that has happened within me has just been amazing. And like I'm so grateful for it and I love it. But there is this part of me that's gone, God, if I'd have known this back when I was in my early 20s, my life looks so different right now. And I think that fear is like, oh God, you're late when you're getting into your late 30s. Is this too late?
I think we have to have our journey. I believe so. Like I also think about it that I wish I'd known some of these things earlier. And I look at myself as a 20-year-old. If I told myself this, he'd say, just go to hell.
Yeah.
Like
Totally.
These things, they don't go drinking. Like you talking about these.
Yeah.
What's the fun in life then, right?
Yeah, you should be like,
so we're ready for things at different stages, I feel. The only thing I would have loved to tell myself is this inner world, because I kind of suffered alone quite a bit, which I didn't know, but it's good to be in touch with your inner self as much as you're with your outer self. But other things, I think they need to follow a process. Yeah. Now, let's talk about folks in their 30s who are stuck, how to think about life. I think one of the biggest things that hold people back is they think, where should I be headed? Where's my destination? And often the destination is not very clear. And because sometimes the destination is not clear, people just stick with what they're doing. I'll just stick with my job because, I don't have a purpose, so let me just do my job. And at some stage, things go wrong. So I think the first thing to know is when we're looking at making a change, we don't need a destination, because the destination is going to be very different from what we ever imagined it to be.
Yeah.
We need to just get moving. How do we get moving? I think the first thing is motivation. Quite often when we work for 15, 20 years, it's very different. Just imagine when you started working in your 20s. I still remember the first day at P&G, Singapore, excited, I want to change the world. If I didn't have work, I would go to my boss, I want to do more work. There was an excitement, novelty, a new stage in life. After 15 years of the corporate world, for a lot of people, the bureaucracy, that gets hammered out. There's exhaustion. So how do we find the motivation here? That's the first thing. And it lies around purpose. And purpose need not be this one big thing, but it also, once we start doing this exercise on what's important, we can realize that a lot of the things that we're doing right now are actually purposeful. Thinking about using our intelligence to solve a problem, creating this new product, we're growing, suddenly we have a new skill, we can stand on stage and talk. These are purposeful. We connect with the same thing, but our mind shifts and we start having a little motivation. So through that, motivation is the first thing that we build. The second thing we can do, it's time for house cleaning, right? We've brought so much of this fear-based identity. So there's this thing, when you have everything in this world, this is one of the things my downfall taught me. When I hit rock bottom, I felt a sense of relief. And I was like shocked, like my loved ones have gone, like why am I feeling relief? And I read up about it. And there's something in Buddhism that says, and I'm paraphrasing, when you have everything in the world, you're fearful that something is going to go. And you're clenching onto it. This fear, you're just holding, you're not enjoying it because you're holding on to it. And when everything's taken away from you, you lose everything, that's bad, but you gain one thing, fearlessness. There's nothing to lose. And with that fearlessness, you can question who you are, question certain setups about life and make those changes. My whole point is, as you turn to 35s, 40s, a lot of us have had success. We're just holding on to that. What if we could have the same fearlessness, but also have things? And building that fearlessness comes from releasing the fear, which comes from to understanding our identity, that I'm this person who's a high net worth individual, great titles, etc. People come to me for this. Now I'm shifting to, now I have to just let go of this identity over a period of time because I'm clenching onto it so badly that I'm doing weird stuff to maintain it.
Yeah.
So releasing it is part of it. Like you talked about releasing and letting go, whichever way we have it. It could be intellectual releasing. And that has to be shifted to a growth mindset.
Yeah.
How are we open to something new? How do we face the fear of all this going away? So that the brilliance that we have with all the experience that we've got can come out in a new way. We can't see it right now. We can't. We may not see it for 5 years. But if we start doing some work in housekeeping and removing all these fixed things in whichever way, just removing is more important than adding. I don't even want to add new potential. I want to just remove all these weird habits, identity things in whichever way. So then there's space for me to grow. There's space for me to reinvent. So I've got some, and that's why I need the motivation to do this work. So I've got some motivation. I'm doing this house cleaning. And in the process of house cleaning, like we talked about it earlier, you realize that, I have these skills which I have not used. Craft is important. I love connecting people. I know. That then starts coming into some sort of an idea. That's the exploration stage next. You take some of this, like you're doing right. You're exploring with the podcast, you're learning something. It's not the final thing, but you've learned something. You're exploring with the startup, you're exploring with all this, there's an exploration stage. And of course, sometimes it feels irritating, but we are in the right direction because we can't see it. And through this exploration with time, we're able to find the path. Like right now, for you, you've got good activities. Maybe you need an achievement anchor, something to go after. Maybe that's what's missing, then you go there. Maybe then something else is missing. So purpose becomes a process of doing this, because the minute you kind of get to the final state, you change, something changes, and then you need to do it again. So enjoying this process of shifting, changing, achieving some anchor, achieving some place to be, then going to the next place, that is this whole process. So for the people stuck, we don't know where we are headed. This is the way to get started. Some motivation, some inner work. We're just doing inner work for going nowhere, removing all our stuff. Some exploration. We're just trying different things. And with all this, we're getting more information. The real information, rubber hits the ground. We're then able to chart out our path. And then we realize it's not destination, it's direction. Directionality. I'm in the right kind of direction. That's fine.
I was just about to say to you, it's the journey, isn't it?
It is.
It's not, your purpose isn't the destination.
No.
It's maybe
this
how.
process. Even though it's cliched, but that's what it is.
And you got to enjoy the journey. On the way. Oh man, Sharad, I could literally have like 10 more interviews with you, because this has just been so insanely insightful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle.
Your energy is just amazing as well. I'm like,
Thank you.
This has been so good. I'm 100% sure I will be phoning you up saying we have to do another one. So really, really thank you so much. And you've definitely given me some food for thought, but I also feel less worried in having to define my purpose. I think I'm already living it.
Wow, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you. I love this conversation. And if that's the message people can take, let's take the pressure out of purpose. Let's just take that pressure out. And we'll just try and live part of it. And we'll slowly live it fully. I think I love that, if that's the message.
That's a keynote for you. There you go. I've given you your next keynote. But because there's pressure, isn't there, to find your purpose.
Absolutely.
And if anything, this conversation now, I feel like, actually, maybe I'm living it. Really, thank you. And then to everyone still listening, I hope you've loved this episode as much as I have. I will link to all of Sharad's amazing platforms below. Please reach out if you've got any questions. Definitely comment on this video and we'll both respond with any advice or stories, or we'd just love to hear yours. So really, thank you again. And thank you everyone for listening, and keep spiraling upwards. Thanks. Bye.